In the hushed corridors of ancient palaces and the soot-darkened halls of revolutions, there was a name. One you will never find etched in monuments or chronicled in textbooks. A name that, if spoken aloud in its time, could shift alliances, dissolve kingdoms, and ignite rebellion. That name belonged to Caelum Valtora, the rebel whose legacy was deliberately expunged, their story reduced to ash and whispers. But today, we will unearth the fragments, piece together the shadows, and ask why the powers of their era feared them so profoundly that they sought to erase their very existence. It begins in Atraxis, a crumbling empire propped up by decadence and despair. Caelum was born in the unlikeliest of places, a tiny mining town nestled in the empire's periphery, where the air smelled of sulfur and dreams withered like parched leaves. Their mother, a healer versed in forbidden remedies, named them Caelum, Sky. A cruel irony for a child whose feet were destined to tread only the scorched earth of oppression. By the time they were 10, Caelum had already begun to question. Why did the miners' children eat scraps while wagons of grain rolled untouched to the imperial city? Why did soldiers march into their village to silence even the quietest protests? Their questions earned them the wary admiration of the other children and the sharp disapproval of elders too beaten by the system to hope for change. But it was in their 12th year, on a blistering midsummer day, that Caelum's destiny was set in motion. While scavenging near the mines, they stumbled upon a cache of banned writings, hidden beneath layers of broken stone. These texts spoke of liberty, equality, and the dangerous idea that rulers derived their power not from divine will, but from the consent of the governed. Caelum devoured these forbidden words, their young mind ablaze with new possibilities. The empire's cruelty intensified. Taxes soared, food rations dwindled, and conscription tore families apart. At 15, Caelum's father was taken to serve in a war fought for imperial greed. He never returned. Grief became the seed of anger, and anger bloomed into action. One fateful evening, Caelum stood atop the village's crumbling well, their voice carrying over the gathered townsfolk. We starve while they feast. We labor while they idle. This is not the way it must be. Their words ignited a spark in hearts dulled by despair. It was the first gathering of what would later be known as the Valtora Rebellion. By their 20s, Caelum had grown into a leader of quiet intensity. They were not a warrior in the traditional sense, but wielded the weapon of ideas. Traveling from village to village, they spoke in secret, rallying the downtrodden. Their symbol, a phoenix encircled by broken chains, began appearing on walls, etched hastily by unseen hands. It became a beacon of hope and defiance. The imperial court, alarmed by the rising unrest, labeled Caelum a heretic and an outlaw. Yet every attempt to capture them ended in failure, thwarted by loyal informants and the labyrinthine knowledge of Atraxis's backroads and forests that Caelum and their followers possessed. Caelum's most audacious act came during the Festival of the Moon, an event attended by nobles, generals, and the emperor himself. Disguised as a humble servant, Caelum infiltrated the grand banquet hall. At the height of the festivities, they rose, their voice cutting through the drunken laughter. You feast while our children starve. You toast to prosperity built on the bones of the poor. Atraxis's days of tyranny are numbered. The hall erupted into chaos. Guards swarmed, but Caelum was already gone, their words lingering like smoke. That night, fires lit across the countryside as villages rose in rebellion. The empire's iron grip began to falter. The rebellion grew, a tide the emperor's forces could not stem. Caelum's strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. Strike fast. Vanish faster. They dismantled supply lines, liberated prisoners, and spread their message through underground networks of messengers and sympathizers. Stories of Caelum's courage became legend. It was said they once faced an entire battalion with nothing but a torch and emerged victorious, their enemies blinded by flames. The Empire, cornered and desperate, deployed its ultimate weapon: erasure. Not content with mere execution, they sought to annihilate Caelum's very memory. Their name was stricken from all records. Symbols of the Phoenix were outlawed. Villages suspected of harboring the rebellion's remnants were razed. Those who spoke of Caelum were silenced. Yet the harder the Empire tried to erase them, the more their legend grew. The forgotten rebel, people whispered in the shadows. Songs were sung in secret, their verses coded to evade imperial censors. Caelum had become an idea, and ideas, as they had once proclaimed, were bulletproof. Centuries have passed, and the empire of Atraxis has long crumbled into dust. But Caelum's legacy endures, not in official histories, but in the spirit of every defiant act, every whispered call for justice. Their story, pieced together from forbidden songs and fragments of burned texts, remains incomplete, yet unyielding. And now, as we stand in an era rife with its own struggles, the question arises: what other names have been erased? What truths lie buried beneath the weight of history's victors? Caelum Valtora's story is a reminder, not just of what was, but of what could be, should we choose to remember. The Phoenix rises again, in every heart that refuses to be silenced.